Good evening, America. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the latest edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from the nation's capital. Last night I was on the road. Tonight, Amanda's stuck at the White House covering an event with President Trump. We'll bring you some updates from that later on. We've got a great show for you today, starting with, in just a few seconds, the man who subpoenaed Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, 6 attorney generals, and 2 FBI directors. That's right, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, will join us in a second. I just want to tell you about 2 quick headlines. Today, we have confirmation that President Trump will meet with Vladimir Putin in the next few days. It came from the Kremlin and the White House. That is a major development, a sign that maybe there could be a ceasefire ahead. Also today, Russia saying it was open to meeting with Ukraine's President Zelensky. All first signs that maybe there's going to be a moment of quiet and calm in a war-torn region in the last few years. Also, one other story, go check it out at justthenews.com. It's a pretty amazing story. You hear all the time Democrats saying, most of the people getting rounded up by ICE are just innocent people that cross the border illegally. Well, first off, that's not innocent. But today, we got some new names and faces of people that ICE has rounded up in the last few days. Homeland Security providing that exclusively to Just the News. Yep, pedophiles, bank robbers, people who did really, really bad things. They weren't just crossing the border trying to get a better life. They were committing crimes on our better life, on our soil. Check out that story. You'll get a really good sense of the difference in what Democrats and the media say and the reality of what ICE sees when they carry out these raids and they arrest these men and women out in the field. All right, with that, it's a great time to turn to our first guest. All right, joining me now, the chairman of one of the most powerful committees in the House Oversight Committee. He's also a best-selling author. If you haven't read his book on the Biden money scheme, you ought to read it. It is a must-read. He is Chairman James Comer from the great state of Kentucky. Sir, good to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me, John. You like my book because I say you're a hero in it.
So, thank you. I love it. It's such an important book, and it was an important investigation. It really was. I want to get to the many important investigations you're on top of today. Let me start with the one that shook Washington a few days ago. Subpoenas to Bill and Hillary Clinton, 6 former attorney generals, 2 FBI directors. You're going to get to the bottom of the Epstein probe and why that man didn't face the sort of justice he probably deserved, right?
Absolutely. That's the goal. The American people want to know what really went on in Epstein Island. They want to know if there was an Epstein list, who's on it. If there's not an official list, they still want to know who were frequent visitors there. They want to know if the government was involved in spying on any of the people there. There's just so many questions, and this has captured the fascination of the American public. And it's not a partisan issue. There are just as many Republicans that want to know what was going on there as Democrats. So my House Oversight Committee has been tasked with taking the lead in that investigation. We passed in a bipartisan manner a vote to subpoena Bill and Hillary Clinton, as well as 6 former attorneys general. So we're serious about this, John, and hopefully we'll get them in very soon and ask the questions that every American wants to know the answers to.
Yeah, it's so important. Are you getting the sort of cooperations from federal agencies that you need to get all the records that the U.S. government has?
Well, we're very hopeful. You know, President Trump has said he's going to disclose all of the Epstein files. My subpoena to Pam Bondi also said for the federal government to turn over all of the Epstein files. So we're serious about this. If any Democrat goes on national media and says the Republicans are trying to obstruct this, that's just not true.
Not at all.
We're as a Congress and as a House Oversight Committee, we're unified, especially the Republicans, in the fact that we want to know everything that the government knows about this. The American people expect transparency, and we're going to do everything we can to see that that happens.
Yeah, so important. And I know you've delayed for a little bit, but at some point you'll probably get a Ghislaine Maxwell deposition, but you're going to let the Supreme Court resolve those issues first, correct?
Yeah, she asked, her lawyer said that if we tried to go in there before the Supreme Court ruled on her appeal, then she would just plead the 5th.
Right.
So I didn't see any need in spending taxpayer dollars sending a bunch of lawyers and members of Congress and court reporters down to do a deposition that wasn't going to amount to anything. So we're working with her attorneys in a good faith manner. As soon as the Supreme Court rules, and I expect they'll rule around September,
right,
we'll roll in there and we'll have a lot of questions for Maxwell.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. All right. You have many, many big things under your jurisdiction. Oh, let me ask one more thing just about the subpoenas. You're going to have some of the biggest heavy hitters who also face questions about a lot of other scandals and abuses in Washington. I know the primary purpose of these depositions will be to focus on their. Are members free to ask what they want in a deposition, or will there be limits on, you can't ask Hillary Clinton about emails or about Russiagate?
Well, I would love to ask, I would honestly want to ask more questions about Russia hoax activity that the Clintons were involved in. But I'm sure, as you know, John, when we're negotiating with their attorneys, they're going to try to negotiate to where the only questions that their clients will have to answer will be those pertaining to Epstein Island. And that again is what the majority of Americans are concerned about. But
right.
You and I, who have been saying for many years now that this whole Russia hoax was manufactured by the Clinton political organization, we would like to ask a lot of questions about that. So we'll try to get that in the deal, but I'm sure at the end of the day, the questions will be limited to Epstein.
Yeah. Well, you can always come back with another subpoena. You're not afraid to do that, as you've showed. Right. And it helped the American people understand how things happen because of that. I want to turn to something that the president is considering, federalizing Washington, D.C. The District of Columbia falls under your jurisdiction. You've been doing a lot of great oversight work, probably oversight work that wasn't done for a long time on D.C. Give us your thoughts on the state of the city, its ability to fight crime, and what the president might just do.
Yeah, unfortunately, John, the city of Washington, D.C. is just not getting it done when it comes to crime. One of the big problems, and I hear this from members and staffers and everyone I interact with in Washington, D.C., is there so many young people that are just running around at all hours of the night, going in businesses, spray painting graffiti, stealing, trying to carjack, and it doesn't seem like there are any consequences for their actions. This city council is a problem in Washington, D.C. I've said that many times that I get along really well with Muriel Bowser, the mayor. Yep. I think she's as good as that city's probably going to elect when you look at the fact that they're about 95% Democrat in Washington, D.C. The problem is, from where I sit, is clearly with the city council. They are so politically correct. They don't want to do anything that they feel is politically incorrect, and they feel that doing anything with children running around is either racist or inappropriate or whatever, and they just turn a blind eye. They don't want to arrest anyone. If anyone's arrested, they don't want to incarcerate them. So there's no consequences for bad behavior. And that's what we have in Washington, D.C., especially with young people, is a lot of bad behavior. And we've complained about this, and yet nothing seems to be happening to improve the situation. So now President Trump has said he wants to federalize Washington, D.C., which legally can be done and should be done. But we're going to have a committee hearing on this in early September. Obviously, if President Trump does this by executive order, that's going to be the law of the land. But we still need to kind of figure out if he does federalize it, what role the mayor and city council will have, and at the end of the day, the most important question is, how do we get crime out of under control in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, protect the residents of the city who've been just under an onslaught for so long. You look at the other capitals of the world, and D.C. has one of the worst murder rates of any capital in this entire globe. It's just remarkable. Congress could pass some legislation to back up the president so a future president can't reverse that. Is that one of the ideas of that hearing? Figure out what legislatively you might want to do?
It is. One of the things that we haven't done a great job of, and it's my understanding now that we've passed the big, beautiful bill, we're going to really focus on in September when we're back in session, is trying to codify a lot of these executive orders so that if something terrible happens and we get a different president in 3 years, that they don't come in and reverse all of President Trump's good executive orders. I mean, you look at what he's doing with tariffs, you look at what he's doing with border policy, with what he's doing with the energy policy in America, and everything's working out. The taxpayers are in better shape than they've been in a long time. We're safer than we've been in a long time, with the exception of some of these Democrat-run cities. And I think that we need to focus as a Congress on trying to codify and go in and make sure that these executive orders become the law of the land as enacted by Congress.
Yeah, so important. I know the American people are looking forward to that. That'll be a big, big task ahead of us. You had Anita Dunn, one of President Biden's top aides. You've had more than a dozen now in. Anita Dunn kind of told us in advance what we would get from her testimony, which is, I think he was just fine, and this is a conservative conspiracy theory. Of course, the Democratic Party did throw Joe Biden off the ticket because they thought he was lame. But what did you learn? Anything from today, or what's the most damning thing you've learned in the course of these interviews and document gathering so far?
Well, the fact that they didn't think it was important to do a cognitive test. I mean, that shows they knew what was going on. You know, the testimony from the last few who we've deposed have said, well, Dr. O'Connor didn't think a cognitive test amounted to anything, even though everyone in the media has said that President Trump should take a cognitive test.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean? It's always when it's left up to the media, the rules only apply to Republicans.
That's
the
right.
American people saw that Joe Biden was in decline. Robert Hur stated it early on, even before the disastrous debate, when he conducted his interview with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden couldn't even remember the dates that he served as vice president of the United States, that something was wrong with Joe Biden. This inner circle shielded Joe Biden from everyone, not just the majority of his staff, but the media and the American people. And they wouldn't even allow a cognitive test to be applied to Joe Biden because they feared what the outcome of that cognitive test would be. So wow. I think that's pretty damning, John.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that came from Bruce Reed, if I remember that correctly, in the doctor. The fact that they were talking about it must have meant that they had some concerns about what they saw with the president, right?
Right. And the media, even liberal media outlets, were questioning whether or not Joe Biden should take a cognitive test or whether or not Joe Biden had taken a cognitive test. So, you know, when NBC and MSNBC and CNN are questioning your cognitive ability, and the 3 or 4 staffers around Joe Biden said, oh, no, we don't need to take a cognitive test, I think that's pretty damning evidence that they knew something bad was wrong with the president of the United States.
Yeah, that's really eye-opening to see how much truth we got because of the work you've done. You're getting it forced into the public, which is great. You've got the autopen issue as well. When we're done with this, could you imagine some legislative changes that will dictate when a president uses an autopen? Have you learned some troubling things about the autopen that feel like it needs a legislative fix?
Yeah, I think there will definitely be a legislative fix. You know, it's questionable whether or not it's legal to use an autopen on a legal document. Right. But what's not questionable is if the president of the United States had no idea what was being signed using the autopen in his name, then that's not legal. And I think at the end of the day, our investigation could be used as evidence in trying to overturn some of those pardons and some of the executive orders, because the autopen was used so frequently from, after that debate on things of like, thousands of times on pardons and on huge executive orders that were used solely to Trump-proof the federal government, to make it harder for Donald Trump to get the federal employees to come back to work, to make it harder for Donald Trump to eliminate the Department of Education, to make it harder for Donald Trump to deport the criminal illegals. These were all executive orders that are being used in court to help block the Trump agenda. And I think that, the evidence it shows at the least that Joe Biden really didn't know what was being done with those executive orders. He admitted to the New York Times that he didn't
That's right.
look himself at all those pardons, that he delegated that to staff. Well, that implicated himself. And I think that, at the end of the day, these Biden inner circle people haven't been able to prove that Joe Biden knew what was being signed with his autopen.
It's just amazing to think that that's what was going on. Will your goal be to hopefully identify those that are legally questionable so that they could be challenged? Is that one of the goals in the report or the final investigation?
It is. And, we've asked about specific executive orders. We've asked about specific pardons. And, we're going to release all the transcripts. Remember, about half the people we brought in have pled the fifth. And again, John, when you ask Dr. O'Connor, the White House physician, a question, the very first question, were you ever told to lie about President Joe Biden's health? And he can't answer that. He has to plead the Fifth Amendment to avoid self-incrimination.
Shocking.
I think that's pretty damning evidence that we had a president that wasn't at the top of his game, to say the least.
Yeah, because a simple no would have been just fine for the American people, but he couldn't offer it. He couldn't offer it. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, as always, it's a great honor. You have the most important oversight portfolio in Congress, and we sure get a lot from all that great work. Great to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John. You do a great job. I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Back at you. All right, folks, what a great conversation. Now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, a man who knows how to fight back against the government, South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, will join us to discuss Russiagate and so much more, including his run for governor of South Carolina. He just announced that a couple of weeks ago. That's all next, right after these quick messages. Welcome back, everybody. When I open the show, I always say I have an amazing co-host, Amanda Head, and she's proved it once again. She was at the White House when this show started. Somehow, she got here and back in time, and she joins us now for the B-Block. Man, that was like, that was Superman-like. That was pretty fast.
I did the Morocco method. Have you ever been to Morocco?
No.
In Morocco, they'll skateboard and they'll grab onto a bumper.
Oh, really?
And they just pull it along the streets. I'm sure it's in a lot of other
Have you
countries.
got video footage of Amanda doing this? I want to send it to me, please.
I borrowed Nephi's skateboard and got dragged back here.
That's crazy.
Oh, man. It's good to
Welcome
be back.
back.
And yes, as I told John, I walk on the shady side of the street, unlike that song. But I want to get into our next guest since I'm back here for this. And as you all know, we are learning so much more about the links that the deep state has always been willing to go to remain in power and all of that Russiagate news. That's obviously proof of all of that. And we already have seen how dangerous lawfare can get when Democrats are trying to throw President Trump in jail during his campaign when he was running for president. So joining us now to discuss all of that, including his race, is a man who has been fighting back against the left's overreach and dangerous authoritarian streak for many years now. South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, who has also announced that he is a candidate for governor of that state. Attorney General Wilson, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, greetings from the road as I campaign across the state of South Carolina. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you, and we want to get a temperature check on your campaign. But first, you served our nation in uniform, and I was at the White House, actually. The reason I was there was for the Purple Heart ceremony with President Trump. And it just struck me, compared to even some other presidents, but especially the last president, how much this president loves and reveres and respects and really, really has that utmost respect for our military. What does it mean for you as a service member to see a president in office who puts that much weight into something like that?
Well, it means a lot. With someone with 29 years of military service and a combat tour in Iraq, I look at our commander-in-chief, and I'm not just honored that he shows so much respect and has so much respect for veterans and those currently serving in uniform, but he puts his money where his mouth is. He actually follows it up with action, and it's great to have a commander-in-chief that the world takes seriously, and when you put on the uniform, you know that President Trump will have your back. And so I'm honored to serve, but I'm really honored to serve under our commander-in-chief.
A lot of people are excited, sir, about your candidacy. You're up in the polls already. Today, Hugh Hewitt, one of the most influential conservatives in America, endorsed you. There's a lot of momentum behind your early election campaign, isn't there?
Oh, first off, I did not expect Hugh Hewitt to endorse me when I was on the radio program. Hugh is phenomenal, and you are right. He is a juggernaut. Yeah. And also in the first 4 or 5 weeks, actually, of running for governor, I've gotten 23 sheriffs have come out and endorsed me. That is half the sheriffs in the state because they recognize what we've been able to accomplish as Attorney General, through the growth of the Human Trafficking Task Force, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, our aggressive stance on all of the illicit and illegal drugs coming in from Mexico into South Carolina, and how we've taken a very tough position on that, as well as illegal immigration. So I've had great law enforcement partners, and they're showing up in droves to support my race for governor, and I'm going to be there to support them when I'm elected next year.
Yeah, important.
General, since you brought up the issue of law and order does reign supreme in South Carolina, but down here in D.C., not so much. And it seems that President Trump is likely to federalize, bring in some National Guard troops or some type of law enforcement to fortify this city and to eradicate a lot of the, especially youth crime that's taking place here. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, Washington, D.C. is a federal enclave of the United States. It's there in the Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. It was set up to be the seat of government for the federal bureaucracy, and the local officials in Washington, D.C. cannot be trusted to protect the population up there. And I think President Trump is well within his rights to do what is necessary to protect the federal capital and also to protect the citizens living there. Again, we don't have these kind of problems in South Carolina. While we do have some lefties in South Carolina, they are few and far between. Law enforcement in South Carolina has the support of its leadership, unlike in Washington, D.C., where the president has to commandeer. I'm just glad that I don't live up there in the district. Here in South Carolina, we wouldn't tolerate that type of lawlessness.
Yeah, exactly right. Sir, you have made many very important points early in your campaign for a governor. One of those is continuing to drive the DEI and radical agendas out of schools and get back to the basics of education so our students can be better prepared for their life ahead. Tell us a little bit about what sort of reception that message gets when you're out in the campaign trail and they know that there's these teachers unions still trying to slip things in the back door of a schoolroom. I think people are appreciative now that they have a government that's moving towards ending that.
Well, thank you. That's a great question. I'll tell you, I'm not just a candidate for governor and the attorney general. I'm also the parent of 2 teenagers in public schools. So this is an issue that I care a lot about. This is an issue I've actually been a leader on. I have actually am currently defending several laws in federal court. We're defending a law right now that protects women in private spaces like locker rooms and bathrooms. Obviously, you have people out there trying to allow people who happen to identify as a particular sex to be able to go into any bathroom they choose. We will not tolerate that in South Carolina. We also have a law on the books right here that prohibits sexually and racially divisive curriculum from being implemented in our schools and indoctrinating our children. And I'm currently leading a coalition of AGs to defend that law in an amicus brief when our state superintendent of education was sued. So we are in the trenches in the courts around South Carolina and around the country to protect our children from this radical leftist woke ideology.
And sir, you have been fighting from across the country with other state attorneys general against a crazy Oregon law regarding foster parents and adoptive parents being required to affirm the gender identity of children in their care. This is absolute insanity, but you just won that case. That's got to resonate loudly across this country.
Look, especially in that particular circuit, that is incredibly powerful and important for us to understand and to talk about. Obviously, when you are trying to commandeer people's religious views and trying to compel speech, that is something we're not going to tolerate. And again, we take the battle to states like Oregon and all over the country so that we don't ever have to deal with it in this area of the country. But I couldn't be prouder to have supported that case and to have worked with my colleagues around the country to get that victory.
Yeah, it's a big one. Earlier today, I had one of your colleagues in the Attorney General world, Andrew Bailey, on. You two are working together to do something I think most female athletes are applauding, and that is to get the NCAA to restore women's athletes' records that were wrongfully erased by male competitors. That's a big win. It's a popular issue, but it's something that still has to be done. Tell us about it and the response you get when you talk about it.
Well, first off, I'm glad you had my very good friend, Andrew Bailey. He's a great patriot. I love serving with him from the great state of Missouri. I am actually I'm hip deep in that issue with him. Obviously, it wasn't just enough for the NCAA to withdraw some of its woke policies allowing men to compete against women in sports, but to retroactively go back and look at those women who were forced to compete when those policies were in place and lose out on opportunities for scholarship, opportunities for advancement. So I am happy and I am proud to work with people like General Bailey and other AGs around the country to demand that the NCAA not only fix things going forward, but retroactively recognize the accomplishments of the women who spent their entire lives and their entire collegiate careers training and preparing, only to have those opportunities ripped away from them from radical leftists governing in the colleges and universities around the country.
And it's personal for you, too, because you have a daughter who's a pretty darn good athlete, right?
I do. She is. I have a 15-and-a-half-year-old. She's a soccer player, and fortunately, she hasn't had to deal with that in our community here in South Carolina. But I don't ever want her to have to deal with it, which is why we got to nip this in the bud right now.
Yeah, so important.
Speaking of that, sir, I think that one of the final nails in the coffin, obviously your efforts, but also the fact that this president presiding over the Los Angeles Olympics in 2028 has said no male athletes are going to come into this country if they plan on competing with women. Do you anticipate that that's going to be kind of a purification process for not only the Olympics, but sports in general?
I can only imagine that the left is going to lose their ever-living minds as we get closer to actually say something so simplistic that is an 80% issue in this country where 80% of Americans agree. But you look at the state where this is going to be happening in, you look at that city, and they're going to lose their minds. But I'll tell you right now, that's good for us, for people who love their country, who love common sense, decency, and values. It's going to be a winning political issue for us in the next 2 to 4 years. It's certainly going to be a winning issue for the president, and I stand behind that position 1,000%.
Yes, sir. Well, we are loving watching your campaign, and keep us posted on how everything is going. I'm sure we'll get you back on again very soon. South Carolina Attorney General and candidate for governor, Alan Wilson. Thanks so much for being with us tonight, sir. And next, we're going to take a closer look at the showdown between Texas Democrats and Texas Republicans over the latest redistricting map. Some Democrats say that if they don't win this battle, it could be the end of the republic. Yes, but we have heard that one before. So we're going to talk about that again on the other side.
Hey, America, the digital dollar is coming, and it's moving faster than most Americans realize. Right now, 134 countries covering 98% of global GDP are developing programmable digital currencies. These aren't just new forms of money. They're built to track everything you do and control how you spend it. China already has 260 million people using their version, which can expire if it's not spent in time. This isn't innovation. It's the end of financial privacy. According to the Bank for International Settlements, these digital currencies will allow governments to monitor every single transaction in real time, and the IMF has confirmed they can be programmed to limit what people can buy and how their money's used. That's why our friends at American Alternative Assets created an urgent new guide. It's called The Digital Dollar Trap: How CBDCs Threaten Your Financial Freedom. It lays out 7 ways these currencies could strip away your freedom and explains why precious metals may be your best choice to opt out before it's too late. Call 855-GOLD-340 or visit johnlikesgold.com to get your free guide. That's 855-465-3340 or visit my site, johnlikesgold.com. Now protect your money before surveillance becomes total and escape is no longer an option. Welcome back, America. One of the big stories we've been covering at Just the News this week, anything we write about, it goes right to the top of the reading charts. The redistricting battle in the state of Texas, where Democrats are on the lam. Literally, they're on the lam. They're hiding in blue states, not doing their constitutional responsibility as lawmakers because they don't want the redistricting plan to go through. They think it'll help Republicans. Well, our next guest is right in the middle of that battle. He's the Chief National Initiatives Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, one of the most trusted think tanks in America. He is Chuck DeVore. Chuck, good to have you back on the show.
Great to be with you.
All right. There's a false narrative, and the other night we had the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, on, and he said, listen, a lot of people say Republicans are just doing this for an advantage, but the fact of the matter is this whole thing started with the Justice Department telling Texas they needed to make a change because they weren't in compliance with the law. This wasn't just political advantage gerrymandering. It's actually required under the law, right?
Well, yes, and there's been a series of court cases really going back about 6 years that have been addressing the issue of redistricting and exactly how it can be done. It's a very political process, right? Redistricting at the end of the day is all about politics and power. The founding fathers assigned that task to the state legislatures to do. And as we see around the country, blue states run by Democrats are really pretty savage when it comes to redistricting and figuring out how to really get optimum advantage from drawing lines. And of course, the bigger a state is, the more latitude you have to kind of move things around. You have a little more real estate to move things around. And I think it's important to understand that what Texas is proposing now, 2 things I think really come to mind that your viewers would be interested in knowing. Number one, it creates 2 new majority black districts, majority minority districts. It creates 2 to 3 additional Hispanic majority districts where today there are only 2 or 3, and 0 black majority districts in Texas. That's number one. Number two, if you look at the proposed partisan advantage in potentially increasing Republican seats by 5, even at that rate, Texas would not quite be as redistricted to partisan advantage as California is for the Democrats. So even with all of that, Texas still has more fair districts than does California today.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, Chuck, and it seems to me that there is a supreme reason why this should be done, as Democrats like to say it, in the middle of the cycle, in between the 10-year mark. And that's because the last time the census was performed in 2020, 1 year later, wasn't Texas notified that the numbers were mistaken and they were very, very off from 2020? So isn't that the best reason of all to say, hey, we got it screwed up last time, now we got to do it again?
Well, I mean, that certainly would be an argument for a nationwide reapportionment because of the fact that the Biden administration goosed the numbers for blue states and suppressed them for red states. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to help us here in the sense that Texas isn't getting any additional seats. What this really comes down to, and by the way, other states have done mid-decade redistricting before. Pennsylvania did it in 2018. So this is not out of the ordinary. What I find kind of amusing or ironic is that the Democrats in Texas fled to Illinois. And if you look at Illinois' congressional maps, they are like a textbook of gerrymandering, or as I occasionally like to say, gerrymandering, in honor of Elbridge Gerry, the founding father who first came up with an odd-looking district in Massachusetts for the 1802 election cycle, as I recall. So, you know, the Illinois districts are the textbook, and there's where the Democrats fled to, right? It's like, please, give me a break. And then you have Gavin Newsom talking about doing redistricting in California, where you have a supposedly independent commission, 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, 4 independents, who draw the lines. Now, the independents there are pretty far left wing, so the lines favor Democrats in California. But you'd have to have a vote of the people to overturn that this November, and then try to draw the lines with some alternative way of doing it. That's a pretty tall order, and I think Gavin Newsom is really just posturing for president to try to make some news right now while he's dealing with a massive systemic deficit in California and a lot of other problems in California. This is a good way of kind of shifting the narrative away from California's problems. But let's say he even is able to do this. The challenge when you get too greedy with gerrymandering is by mathematical design, you have to have a whole bunch more seats that are just barely an advantage for one party or the other. So if you really try to push it too hard, you risk in a bad year losing a lot of seats that would otherwise be safe if you were more conservative, as in risk-adverse conservative.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I want to ask a little bit, it's the dead of August, so I know a lot of people are thinking about getting their kids back to school or getting that last vacation to the beach or something, but how is this playing in Texas when it just comes to the idea that Democrats don't want to show up for their job and do what they were elected to do? I mean, they might lose, but that isn't an excuse not to show up for your job. Is that resonating yet? I guess there's a history of it in the state, but is it resonating?
Yeah, so I would say that it is beginning to. If you look at the last time this happened in 2021,
Right.
I think we went, 4 special sessions before they finally came back to do their jobs. And that was over the issue of election integrity, election reforms. I testified for those bills. And by the way, very common sense stuff about trying to improve security around mail-in ballots, for example. That's why they broke, and they were claiming, oh, this is new Jim Crow, and this is terrible, this and that, and the other thing, disenfranchisement. In the first election cycle back, by the way, after that, those new reforms were put in place, election participation went up by voters after all of the supposedly disenfranchising moves. But by the end of that period, the average Texan was just getting completely impatient with these individuals who were elected to represent their districts and who were off in other states avoiding their jobs. Now, what has changed since then is that now there is a $500 a day fine on the individuals. They can't pay for that with their campaign accounts, and you've got The Justice Department, I believe, and certainly the Attorney General Attorney General of Texas, looking into who are paying these Democrats to stay out of the state. And is there any sort of a quid pro quo involved, which of course would be illegal?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting follow the money trail. I can't wait to see where it ends. Chuck, for folks who don't know the great work your foundation is, what's the best way for people to stay in touch?
Well, TexasPolicy.com is our website, and you can follow me on X at Chuck DeVore.
That's pretty easy. We love the great work you do there. Thanks for giving us a great update on the ground from Texas. Good to have you there. Thanks for joining us. All right, what a great conversation. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll get back to the topic of election integrity. I love this. Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray will join us in just a few seconds. He's had some big wins in trying to secure elections in that state. We're going to tell you about it right after the break.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to shift topics just a little bit in this block, where Democrats said Texas redistricting would help rig the 2028 midterm elections in favor of Republicans in the last block. Well, now, if you really wanted to rig elections, you'd actually do something quite different. If it were me, I would try to oppose all the forms of voter ID laws and election integrity measures, all those integrity checks and bells and whistles and all of that. And it certainly isn't Republicans who are opposing those things. So with us now to talk more about it is someone who is doing all that he can to protect his state's elections. He is Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray. Secretary Gray, thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on that big win against Mark Elias.
Yes, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We were just talking to Chuck DeVore with Texas Policy, and as it turns out, when you secure elections and you give the American people faith that their vote counts, voting actually goes up, doesn't it?
Turnout goes up because voter confidence is up. And here in Wyoming, we became the first state in the nation to have a proof of citizenship for voting requirement that applies to all races, not just state races. We applied it to all races. And because we have an NVRA exemption going back to the 90s, we are able to apply it to all races. And we got that done in the 2025 legislative session. We were sued by radical leftists, Russia hoaxer attorney Mark Elias, and we worked with the Trump administration, with the Republican National Committee, with Republican attorney generals from across the nation to fend off this attempt by the radical left to stop our election integrity statute from becoming law. And we won. Our motion to dismiss was granted.
Yeah, huge win. Huge win, and a common sense win too. All right, so I'm just curious if you could help our viewers understand this. I got to go, if I go to the liquor store, I have to show a license. If I go on a plane, I have to show a license. When I pick up my tickets at the will call at a baseball game, I have to show a license. What possible argument does Mark Elias have that showing that you are who you are and that you're allowed to vote is somehow disenfranchising?
You're absolutely right that this is common sense. That's why it has over 90% support from the American people. Poll after poll shows that. They even ran a poll in California that showed supermajority support for proof of citizenship for registering to vote. And voter ID is important as well. I mean, when you think about both of these issues, voter ID is at the polls, somebody proving that they are who they say they are by showing photo ID. And there are a lot of states that have gotten that done, including Wyoming. Yep. Now, the new thing that a lot of states, including Wyoming, have recently been working on is the registration process itself. And it really should be a three-pronged process. You should have to prove your identity, that you are who you say you are at the time of registration, that you live where you say you live, that's proof of residency, and that you're indeed a citizen, and that's proof of citizenship for registering to vote. And ideally, that when you have a process where a license from a state that is compliant with federal law, that's able to achieve all three of those boxes, so that it's exactly what you said, which is you go to buy alcohol or buy cigarettes or whatever, it's the same process, and it's just as easy as registering to vote, but you have those security measures in place. And that's what we did in the state of Wyoming. And we're working now to get this across the nation, because it is common sense just like you said, and it's about election integrity. It's about securing the vote.
Yeah.
No doubt.
So your state now has the Rolls Royce of voter, election integrity measures. There are some red states across this country that have the Mercedes version and the McLaren version and the Lamborghini version, but you've got the Rolls Royce. For those people who have pretty good measures, but they want to get up to that next level, as you were meeting at the White House with other states' attorneys generals, what was the advice that you were giving them?
Well, you're absolutely right. We had a great meeting last week at the White House with other secretaries of state. The Trump administration has been doing wonderful work in optimizing what's called the SAVE database. Now, when Biden was in office, just 7 months ago, the Biden administration had the SAVE database, and it was a disaster. You could not search batches of individuals for proof of citizenship. They charged per search. You couldn't even search based on the last four of the Social Security number. So it was basically useless for election officials like myself in proving citizenship for individuals on the voter rolls. Now, just since early March, in the last 4 to 5 months, they have fixed all these issues, the Trump administration, and it's really because of the leadership from President Trump at the top. They allow for batch searches now. They're not charging per search so that you can check citizenship across the voter rolls. So you have voter list maintenance, which we call voter list hygiene. And you can also soon check based on the last four of the Social Security number. That's an optimization that is coming. So when we went to the White House, we're talking with the administration about all that they've achieved in the last 4 to 5 months and why states should be enrolling in this SAVE database to check citizenship on the voter rolls and engaging what every state election official should be doing, which is voter list maintenance for those currently on the voter list. So that's one thing in answer to that question. States should be on that SAVE database and doing SAVE checks to ensure that there are no non-citizens on the voter rolls. On top of that, they should also be doing that three-prong check at the registration, at the time of registration, which is proof of identity, which most states have, and then also proof of residency and proof of citizenship, which most states do not have. Now, Wyoming, we have it for residency and also citizenship for all races. So that's really what I think is the cutting edge on election integrity looking forward. And at the federal level, passing the SAVE Act, which is proof of citizenship for registering to vote at the federal level, putting that into federal law. 2 years in a row, the House has passed this bill. We're awaiting action by the Senate. There is an Only Citizen Vote tour that is going to be starting later this month, going across the nation on the importance of getting the SAVE Act through the Senate. And that would again be proof of citizenship for registering to vote at the federal level. On top of that, implementation of President Trump's great executive order from March 25th, which puts into place a requirement that the federal voter registration form have a proof of citizenship requirement in it. Now, unfortunately, we have these leftist judges that have put a stop temporarily on that important executive order. So we're working with the administration to fight that in federal court to get that executive order in place so that the Election Assistance Commission, the EAC at the federal level, can implement that executive order and have a proof of citizenship requirement on the federal form. So there's basically like 6 or 7 different fronts right now in this battle, and we're fighting all of them to get election integrity across the finish line.
Yeah, you are in the fight in so many ways, and I know the people of Wyoming appreciate that, and the people of this country, because this is, ultimately is at the federal level as well. Wyoming Secretary of State Chuck Gray, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We'll get you back on soon. Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, coming up after this, some final thoughts from the both of us before we head into Friday. Friday, it is Friday light.
That's hard
Friday
to
light,
believe, isn't it?
I love it. We'll be right back.
Almost there. Welcome back, America. All right, so I seldom go back and play something that we already had on the show, but there was a moment in the Harmeet Dillon interview, and lots of people have been talking about it, including people inside the FBI and the Justice Department. I think she dropped a giant hint about what sort of criminal cases people in the FBI and CIA who cheated and abused their power might face. Just listen to this. I want to get Amanda's reaction again to it. There are instances where depriving someone of their civil liberties is a criminal act, right? It's not just a civil enforcement matter.
Well, exactly. And this again goes back to those Reconstruction era statutes that sought to remedy the vestiges of racism. And we had some terrible incidents in our country's history of law enforcement officials conspiring to deprive African Americans of their civil rights. And that is where some of these laws stem from, but they're broader than that. And so it can be a crime for government officials, either together or in conspiring with non-government officials, to violate people's civil rights.
All right.
And you treat it exactly the same way now as you did then. They were okay with it then. They should be okay with it now.
It's remarkable to think of it. You look at the dirty cops who might have beat black people back in that difficult era in our time, but not much difference if an FBI person cheated to get you. I think that this may be the overarching focus of the case. I think we might have had a big moment, big revelation.
Well, and to be fair, you and I have been talking about the deprivation of rights issue on the show for practically as long as we've been having this conversation.
Difference that she's inside the Justice
Department.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah,
she's got that moxie behind it.
All right. My good friend Miranda Devine. I love Miranda Devine. She's such a great reporter. She's also just a fun person to talk to. She had a fun interview with Tulsi Gabbard about the existence of maybe aliens. Watch this one, guys.
So do you believe that there could be aliens?
I honestly, like, my personal belief, I have my own views and opinions.
Right.
In this role, I got to be careful with what I share.
Very interesting.
and I'm laughing. My husband's laughing in the corner because we have these same conversations, and obviously I don't share any classified information outside of my building with those who have clearances. But this is fun that he's here to watch this right now.
I can attest
I
to
think
the
those
fact.
personal opinions maybe they do exist. I think that's her personal opinion. But we'll see.
I think it's Congressman Tim Burchett who has talked about, and I don't know if he's serious about this. It kind of seems like he is serious about it, that aliens might be angels. And he creates kind of a crossover argument between the Bible and extraterrestrial life. It's quite interesting. But, you know, for so long, the American people have been split on this issue. And listen, I used to live a few states over from New Mexico. I never actually made it over to Roswell. I would like to someday, though, and I would like to get some answers. So, D&I, Gabbard, please enlighten us more if you are able.
Right. Yeah.
All right, and another clip from that very interview, as John said, with Miranda Devine. She still has questions surrounding those New Jersey drones. Remember when we were talking about that for, 2 weeks straight? Check this out.
And the New Jersey, the strange objects over New Jersey were drones.
I still have a lot of questions around that.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard what the public official line is. I just personally still have a lot of questions that are unanswered.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just New Jersey. It was happening in different parts of the country.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The reason I think that the American people deserve answers on this is because as she said, it happened in more than just New Jersey, but it is really unsettling for the people of that community still today to not know what that was hovering above their homes.
Yeah, no, it is unsettling, and we got a straight answer. Bless you. All right, so a little breaking news. Just a few seconds ago, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that she's putting out a $50 million reward if anyone could lead to the arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
Whoa.
First time in history that a sitting leader of a Latin American country had a bounty from the United States on their heads.
How much did you say? 50 million?
50 million
I'll
bucks.
See you later, John.
Yeah. We're not done with the show. Don't go yet. You get a head start.
Got a minute and 4 seconds left.
All right. How about a bounty for Jim Acosta finding a good idea to talk about?
Let's do it. Roll the tape.
Joaquin, I would like to know what your solution would be for gun violence.
Great question. I believe in a mix of stronger gun control laws, mental health support, and community engagement. We need to create safe spaces for conversations and connections, making sure everyone feels seen and heard. It's about building a culture of kindness and understanding. What do you think about that?
So that young man was a victim of the Parkland shooting. He is dead. He no longer has a voice and no longer has a choice of whether he is out there like that. I found this to be positively ghoulish.
Yes. AI, it was an AI version of him, right? Yeah, how awful.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Who are the parents who consent to that?
I don't know. Pretty amazing. Well, I guess if you don't have real news to talk about, you make up some news. How about that?
Yeah, or if you're trying to harp on the same thing over and over again.
Well, tomorrow you're going to be on the road. I'm going to try to survive solo, but we're going to have some fun. I've got some good guests coming up tomorrow. Keep an eye on the site. We've got a big scoop coming up in the morning. We'll be back tomorrow. Now it's time to